Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to SF Commons. Tonight we will be talking about a very important subject matter, the subject matter of Social Security. With all of the commotion going on in Washington, D.C., all the conflicting information, semi-information about the world, the past election, and so forth, we need to focus on issues that concerns our lives. There's nothing more disconcerting than to see people who have put in monies working all their lives to have suddenly in their old age be thinking that perhaps when they hit their 60s, like 62 and on, that they will not have the money that they otherwise had paid for. So, in order for us to bring forth this discussion and eliminate on the issue of Social Security, we're very fortunate that we have Mr. Max Richmond to educate us. And let me just give you his background. And we're very fortunate and very lucky that we have Max Richmond in our show. Mr. Richmond is a former staff director of the Senate Special Committee on Aging. He is the president and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. He is one of the nation's most influential senior advocacy and education membership organizations, and he directed a lengthy investigation of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's enforcement of age discrimination statutes and developed legislation to establish a consumer price index for the elderly, which, if adopted, would lead to a more accurate cost living adjustment for Social Security beneficiaries. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Max Richmond. Hi, Max. How are you? Or you're on
I'm,
air now.
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be on the program.
Thank you so much. So, just to kind of get started, in Washington, D.C., right now, there's a big discussion about the Social Security Reform Act of 2016. Could you tell us what that act is, who's behind it, and what are they proposing?
Well, the chairman of the Social Security Subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives introduced a bill late last year, the one you're referring to, that he characterized as a plan to fix, and I say that in quotes, to fix Social Security. What he proposed is essentially cutting the program. Now, Social Security is solvent, not based on what Max Richmond says, but what the trustees report until the year 2034.
Right.
And then, if there are no adjustments at all, it would only be able to pay about 80% of the benefits that are required. First of all, that doesn't mean it's bankrupt. It will still pay benefits, but not full benefits. We don't want to see that happen. And there are a lot of approaches as to how to prevent that from happening. The bill you're talking about relies exclusively on cutting benefits. And that's, we believe, the wrong approach. And when I talk about cutting benefits, it includes cutting the cost of living adjustment, having a different formula for producing the cost of living adjustment that results in a lower number, reducing the actual benefit by changing the formula for computing Social Security benefits, raising the age for receiving benefits, which is clearly a cut in benefits. If you have to wait 2, 3, 4 years longer, your benefits over your lifetime that you're collecting benefits will be lower. So the approach is cutting benefits. There are other ways to achieve long-term solvency beyond.
When Bernie Sanders was running during the primary, he had a great idea. He had an incredible idea about a legislation that he wanted to see happen. He was talking about making adjustments on the income of people who pay into Social Security, right? But
Right.
before we talk about that, let's just kind of cover what Social Security means, because before Congress starts talking about even discussing cutting Social Security, the fact is the federal government has been borrowing money, right, from the Social Security Trust Fund in trillions of dollars, right? Because every working person pays into Social Security. So you have this built up funds in the Social Security Trust account. So for people to even say, well, let's start cutting back, well, pay us back what you owe us. I mean, in my book, and people who are, just kind of following what Social Security is. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there are many misconceptions about how the Social Security program raises money, saves money, pays out benefits,
Right.
and you touched upon some of that. Uh, Back in the early 1980s, the Congress saw that they needed to make some changes because the baby boomers would start entering Social Security eligibility years and would start drawing benefits. So a lot of changes were made in 1982 and 84 in terms of how the revenue was brought in and how the benefits were calculated. The net result is the program was extended. By the way, at that point, it looked like 5 or 6 months when the program would be at the point of not being able to pay full benefits. So we don't want to go back to that kind of crisis.
Right. Right.
But the changes that were made extended the solvency of the program to what it is today, which is 2034.
Right.
Now, now the way that was accomplished is more money was brought into the system than is needed to pay benefits so that a reserve could be built up. That's
Right.
what you were referring to.
Exactly.
That pot of
Exactly.
money, it's about $2.8 trillion held
Right.
in reserve,
Right.
saved, as it now will start to be drawn on when the baby boomers, that
Are
large
we earning
influx of
interest
people,
on that?
it gets interest. It is invested in government
Okay.
bonds. These are not, I've heard people mischaracterize this trust fund as a bunch of IOUs. These are not little slips of paper with Max Richman or some name written on them. These are government bonds,
Right. Right.
and they have the full faith and credit of the United States backing them up.
Okay.
So they don't get the highest amount of interest. I mean, you get a better interest if you go out and get something very risky,
Right.
but it's a safe, stable, most secure kind of investment.
Right.
And yes, it collects interest. This money, I've heard it characterized as there's nothing there but a bunch of worthless IOUs. These are government bonds.
Yeah.
They're rolled over almost every day. Interest is paid on them. The money is not stolen. It doesn't need to be paid back because it was never stolen. It
Okay.
is kept in a trust fund, which earns interest, and I think it's an object of real genius
Right.
to have a system set up like this. It is completely self-funded,
Right.
completely
Oh, that's
self-funded.
great.
Even the administration, a lot of folks don't know this, but even the administration of the Social Security program, I'm not talking about the actual checks that people receive, but the operation of the program, all of the thousands of people in offices all over the United States, in communities large and small, that
Right.
help beneficiaries sort out their file and sort out problems. All of those costs are paid out of the payroll tax. So,
Right.
it's self-financed. It is wisely invested. As one of the leading senior citizen lobbying groups, we don't have our heads in the sand. We think we need to make adjustments
Right.
because we
Right.
don't want to get to 2034 and not be able to pay
So
full
we do have
benefits.
money there. We have like a savings sort of, we have like a savings account, for lack of, better explanation. But we do have that money. We're not broke, in other
That's
words.
right.
Right. So then, why can't Social Security give our elderly, a cost of living increase? Why are they saying, "Oh no, you're not going to get a cost of living increase"? Did the elderly get cost of living increase last year?
Well, the answer is based on a formula. The
Right.
COLA is based on a formula that measures inflation. The cost of
Right.
living adjustment was put into place in the mid 70s. It used to be before 1974, 75. There was a COLA. If there was a COLA, it was based on what Congress did that year. They would just
Right. Right.
adopt
Right.
an amount and apply it to the Social Security check.
Right.
But then it became clear that certain members of Congress were using that because they were interested in running for president and would let's give seniors a large COLA and
Right.
claim credit for it in a press release. So that all changed in the mid 70s, and it's a strict formula that measures inflation from the fall of one year to the fall of the next year. And that number is added to the monthly check for the following year.
Okay.
So, and here's the problem. You asked why is there sometimes no COLA?
Right.
That formula is flawed. It does not accurately measure inflation as it applies to a Social Security beneficiary, an older
Um.
person. It measures inflation as it impacts a younger person, a
Right.
wage earner. In fact, it's called, the acronym is Consumer Price Index W, CPIW, Consumer Price Index for a wage earner.
Right.
So that, based on that formula, goods and services that are needed and used by a younger person are measured in terms of the cost from one year to the next. But to apply that to a Social Security beneficiary, an
Right.
older person who has different needs for different goods and services and is impacted in a different way. For example, in
Uh huh.
2016, the COLA was zero. In 2010 and 11, the COLA was zero.
So
In
no increase
2000,
then. No.
there was no COLA.
Right.
And keep in mind, when there's no COLA, it hurts beyond that year
Oh,
because the
definitely. Yeah.
COLA is like interest on a savings account. It's compounded every year.
Well,
So
especially with
when
people with
when there's no
inflation.
COLA one year,
Right.
it is going to adversely affect a COLA that may be in
Right.
a succeeding year. But here's the problem. For example, in 2016, as you know, even in California, the price of gasoline dropped dramatically, right?
Right.
And that pushed down the overall inflation number based on the consumer price index for wage earners. But seniors don't drive as much as younger
Right.
people. They
Right.
don't go to work and back every day. They don't drop children off to school and pick them
Right.
up and take them to activities. So the fact that gasoline dropped dramatically didn't have as much of a negative impact on inflation as it affects them. What we should be doing is using a different formula, something I worked on, as you mentioned in the opening,
Right.
years ago, that is a consumer price index for the elderly that looks at that market basket of goods and services that seniors rely on more than younger people,
Right.
such as healthcare, out-of-pocket healthcare costs beyond what Medicare provides, uh, 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 heating, cooling, things that are really important to seniors that are more, they rely on more than younger people.
Right.
And that should be included in the calculation. So that needs to change. And that's the reason why you have, I think this year, 2017, the COLA is about 0.3%.
That's hard.
It's
That's nothing, right?
it's an average of about $4 a month.
Right.
Does not even keep up with the increase out of pocket costs for Medicare premiums.
Exactly. Max, people, there's also a component of Social Security that's disability. Could you kind of cover that as well? Because in looking at Social Security, it's just not old people, but you have disabled people, you have survivors. Could you cover those? Because it really covers a lot of people. It's a
It
safety
covers a lot.
net
And I'm
for a lot
really
of
glad
people.
you raised that point because a lot of people, younger people, don't understand just what you said.
Right.
Social Security is insurance
Right.
for families. Yes, it's there for older people in retirement, but a third of Social Security benefits go to non-retired workers, the groups you just mentioned,
Right.
disabled, survivors,
Right.
spouses, children. Over 4 million children get by in life because Social Security is there for them
Right.
when they have a parent who becomes disabled or dies young. So it's a program, it's a family insurance program. You know, we know the term FICA.
Right. Yeah.
FICA stands for Federal Insurance Contribution Act, and it funds old age, survivor, and disability programs. So, you know, one way I try, and it's actually, as you know, younger people are the most cynical about ever getting Social Security. And
Right.
I've
Right.
seen all those statements where younger people think they're more likely to see a UFO than to get a Social Security check. And part of
I'm
that,
starting to feel that now. It's like my
yeah,
daughter and my
but
nephews and
but
nieces, like,
but
you old people don't know anything.
part of that is all the myths that have been perpetuated about how it's going broke,
Right.
and also
Exactly.
the fact that younger people don't recognize that it's insurance for them right now. For example, a
Right.
27-year-old worker with a spouse and two children has, on average, right at that time,
Right.
forget about when they retire, has about $500,000 in value of life and disability insurance for their families. And younger people don't appreciate that until something bad happens in a family and someone will say, you know, you should go down to the Social Security office and look into your disability benefits or survivor benefits if it's your children or its spouse that are left behind in the event that a young worker dies. So it's a very important concept, and I don't know what your listeners' age group
Well, so
is,
in
but
San Francisco,
I
there's a
hope the
lot of
younger ones are paying attention.
well, we're in San Francisco, so we have a lot of young people in San
That's
Francisco.
great.
We have a lot of millennials.
Right.
So they're not thinking about this right now, unfortunately. But I mean, the problem is, like people work all their lives, and then they get to that retirement age, and because when people have worked in corporations all their lives, they don't have pensions. This is it.
This is it.
Unless they were able to, you know, make investments or contribute to a 401k, but because of the difficulty of the economy and the fact that most people are eking a living paycheck to paycheck, they hit that age. It's like, okay, we have nothing saved, because they barely survive, right? This is it. Social Security is
You know,
it.
Social Security was described for a long time as one leg of a three-legged stool. There was Social Security, pensions, and savings. Those other two stools are pretty wobbly. As you just pointed out,
Right.
um, most people do not have defined pension benefits anymore. They're lucky if they have 401ks.
I mean, yeah, yeah.
So that and savings are pretty meager. So right now,
Right.
about 65% of Social Security beneficiaries depend on Social Security for the majority
And that's not
of their.
much. What's the
That's not.
average? What's the average Social Security
It's less than $1,400 a month.
for how old? If you're
For the
62?
average benefit for Social Security beneficiaries is $1,400 a month. Some are higher, some are lower. I'm sure you'll find people
You
that are
can't even get a studio
receiving
in San Francisco for
six, seven
1,400 a
hundred
month.
dollars a month, and not too, especially in a place like San Francisco, it's
Yeah.
be pretty hard to get by
You can't
with
even get a
rent,
studio for that.
utilities, Medicare
Exactly.
premiums, out-of-pocket costs, uh, eye care, dental care,
Right.
vision
So what do we
care,
need to do to
fourteen hundred
change
dollars
this,
a month.
Max? What do we need to do? I mean, like I mentioned initially, Bernie Sanders ran on something about adjusting the taxation that the higher income people over 150 who make over 150,000, they should be taxed at a higher
Right.
rate, something like that to generate more revenue. What do you think?
I think that's a good plan. We endorsed Senator Sanders' proposal. We've last year we've
Right,
endorsed another proposal that follows the same model.
right,
It has been introduced by Congressman John Larson of Connecticut. I think he has nearly 100 co-sponsors.
Right.
That bill would start, let me back up. Right now, there's a cap on wages subject to the payroll tax. It's
Right.
127,200. After that, no more payroll tax. So the bill that Senator Sanders supports, that we support, keeps the cap at the current level, but starts collecting Social Security payroll tax, FICA tax, again when someone's wages reach 250,000.
Yeah. Max, I want to play
The
something
other
for you
bill,
here. Max, hold on. Let
yeah.
me play something for you here. What do you think about this?
Every Republican.
Oh, this is Donald
wants to
Trump
do
making a
a big
promise
number
about not cutting
on
Social Security.
Social Security.
It's
They want to
17
do it on
seconds.
Medicare.
So
They want to do it on
he
Medicaid.
promised,
And we
right,
can't
when
do
he
that.
was
And it's
running,
not fair to
that
the
he's not
people
going
that
to
have
cut
been
Social
paying
Security
in for years. And now all
and
of a sudden they want to be cut.
Medicare. Here you go. Do you think people can make him hold his feet to the fire on this?
Well, I heard, I think I watched all the Republican primary debates, and he was the only one running for president on the Republican side that promised, as you said, over and over again, he was not going to touch Social Security or Medicare.
Right.
So you're right. We need to hold his feet to the fire, and we're doing that. We're sending him letters. We're reminding him on programs like this, on
Right.
other media sources that are available to us, that he made that promise. Is the president going to keep his promise? I wish I knew for sure. We'll
But
do
it's up to
everything we
us,
can.
right? It's especially with your leadership. Your committee has 3 million members,
Right.
right? And you're very powerful. You're a member of a PAC. As a matter of fact, you're with the Democratic National Committee, and
Correct.
you have a lot of influence in Congress. So you're a force to reckon with. And with medias like this, where we get to the millennials and educate them, we're starting to, anyways, then he won't have any choice at that point but to make sure that he does not renege on that promise, right?
I hope you're right. He's kind of a force to be reckoned with as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well,
Uh,
we hired
we'll,
him. They can always be fired, right?
we'll do our part, and a lot of other groups are
Right.
with us on this. And we're gonna, right now, the focus today, tomorrow, is on the Affordable Care Act, on
Right.
Medicare, on the
Okay, we'll
budget.
talk about
So
Medicare in our next segment.
Yep, but there's
Okay.
not much being discussed on Social Security.
Right, exactly.
This is the time for us to prepare, because it's going to be a battle.
Exactly.
Whatever the president promised, it's going to be a
Well, we
battle.
have to push him to make sure that hey, you had people had voted for you because you made these promises, and just like his TV show The Apprentice, if you don't do it, you're fired, right? That's how we do that.
Well, that's what we have to do.
Exactly. So anyway, Max, thank you so much. It's been great having you on the show, and folks, please go to the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare website. Max, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Again, good night. This is Myrna checking out. Thank you very much.